Hi, I'm Julie Gottlieb. I'm a professor of modern history in the Department of History at the University of Sheffield. I work on various aspects of women's history, women in politics, and the cultural and social history of modern Britain.
Hello, I'm Emily Calcaft and I'm studying a historical research masters here at the University of Sheffield.
I'm here to talk to you about the importance of Women's History Month, because as you might think you know a lot about women's history, that women are well represented, but actually it's taken a long time for women to have a proper place, both in history books and in public spaces.
Public history itself helps to convey these massive historiographical concepts to a wider public audience, and I think that it massively increases interest in history.
I've had the great opportunity to work with 3 different artists to make sure that certain major landmarks in women's history are well represented in public spaces. I'm really happy to be here in front of this artwork by Coralie Turpin. Coralie Turpin was commissioned to do this wonderful mosaic piece for the entrance of Knight House. Knight House is a student accommodation named in honor of Anne Knight. This is a wonderful piece that not only commemorates Anne Knight's contribution, but shows the whole timeline of major milestones in the history of women's emancipation and suffrage in modern Britain, from the mid-19th century all the way to the present and the Me Too movement.
What you see here is a record of the collaboration between artist and historian. And I was really glad to be able to contribute this blurb to explain Coralie's artwork to those who were passing by.
2018 was a momentous year in British women's history. At least it was the centenary of women's suffrage. Women got the vote, not on equal terms with men. They would do so in 1928. I was approached by the dancer-choreographer Freddie Garland. When Freddie approached me, her dance project was already in the making, and it was called Angels of the North. And I thought it was interesting to think about her dance piece as a longer trajectory, to express the long struggle for women's emancipation and the continuous one as well. So we decided to rename the project Women's Movement 100, with of course the double entendre there on movement. And it was wonderful to work with her and to watch her dancers realize their own kind of womanhood, their own relationship to the past, the present, and their aspirations for the future through their own body movement.
So in one of my research projects, I looked at women's football during and immediately after the First World War, up to the FA ban in 1921. The ban stayed in place until the 70s. Last year, with the women's victory in the Euros in England, historians actually pointed out that women's football wasn't just immediately blossoming, but it had already had an amazing stage in the past that has been translated to a public audience. It's even had sort of plaques at the games containing women's history, history of football in particular, and that was, I think, very important for people that were attending the games, allowed them to reflect on the processes that have created women's football, but the processes that have also sort of harmed women's football.
I was approached by 1418 Now, which was the arts project of the First World War centenary, because they were behind the statue of Millicent Fawcett, which was planned for Parliament Square. I was asked to work with Turner Prize winning artist Gillian Wearing on thinking about the 59 figures who would go around the plinth of the statue. It was already decided that it would be Millicent Fawcett who would be on top of the plinth, but Gillian Wearing's conception was to do something much more democratic, to illustrate and to emphasize the many different people who contributed to this momentous achievement of getting the vote for women in 1918. That statue now stands in Parliament Square. It's the only statue of a woman in Parliament Square. The 59 figures around that plinth represents the breadth and depth of the suffrage movement.
Since the commemoration of the 100 years since the suffrage campaigns and the Representation of People's Act, there's been a lot more public output of women's and gender historians, and a lot of that has come in a TV and film sense. The public are starting to get a greater perspective of what happened. Women's history in particular helps us to interpret the world around us. A lot of the struggles that women's history sought to point out, at least in an early stage, are still present today.
Having Women's History Month is a kind of double-edged sword. It's great that we have this moment to pause and to think about the importance of women's history, to make sure that it's integrated into all walks of life, into public life, into academic life, into school life. But in a way, It's a shame that we still need that kind of time where we stop and pause to think about women. It would be much more reassuring if we didn't need Women's History Month anymore.